300 is horrific impacts that are threatened. And if anyone tells you this is a natural phenomenon, show them this graph. This is the what scientists believe the climate was like up until the mass burning of fossil fuels, 1900. There's no way to explain the spike on this graph except climate change. Now, some of the contrarians said, oh, well, they're not really sure of this because we weren't keeping detailed records back for the last 2,000 years. We do have incredible records from ice cores and tree ring data. We know this to be a fact, and it's getting worse and worse. Tornadoes have increased 7-fold in the last 55 years. 6 out of 7 tornadoes today can be considered caused by climate change. Hurricanes, like the cyclone is just another name for a hurricane, which just hit in Myanmar, Burma, could likely have been a contributing factor caused by climate change. Undoubtedly, the 3 Category 5 hurricanes we saw in 2005, Katrina's impact in New Orleans, was probably contributed, climate change probably contributed to that. As the world's oceans have increased a degree Fahrenheit on average, we can expect much worse things to come. And just like in Myanmar and Katrina, it is the poor who are going to suffer climate change the most. The international group Christian Aid found that 180 million people are expected to die in sub-Saharan Africa this century just because of climate change if we continue with business as usual. So we've got to make changes. And unfortunately, we are increasing emissions. We've increased them 17% in the last decade when we've known for decades that we should be decreasing them. And we're way down here in this graph. We do not want to see what this planet would look like. And the first of the fossil fuels we should stop burning is coal. Unfortunately, that industry is very powerful. And they like to make us think that there's clean coal. There's no such thing as clean coal. It's an oxymoron. Coal is the dirtiest of the fossil fuels, emits about twice as much carbon per BTU as natural gas. So in order to change business as usual, we need to start using energy a lot more efficiently and switch our energy sources to renewables. The nice thing is this will solve so many other problems. As we switch to mass transit and get cars going 80 miles to the gallon, it won't matter as much what the price of oil is. As we switch to solar and wind, it won't matter at all what the price of oil is. As we burn less coal and oil, it'll clean up our air, and we won't need to be having wars for oil if we don't burn oil. Now, one of the single first changes we all can do is change our light bulbs, compact fluorescents using 4 to 5 times less energy, weatherizing homes, another simple thing that can create jobs, create a more comfortable environment, and save on our utility bills, getting cars closer to 80 miles per gallon. In Europe, there are 60 cars on the market getting more than 60 miles to the gallon. But I'm a big advocate of trains and mass transit. I try hard to do most of my speaking tours by train because they get up to 40 times better fuel efficiency per passenger mile and are just a much better quality of life, better way to travel. You look right out on nature instead of endless lanes of traffic and billboards. And Salt Lake City put in a transit system in just a couple of years. It doesn't have to take long to do this. And things that we don't think about, buying locally produced food. Food and beverages are very heavy, and I brew my own beer in part because having water coming from the tap and just transporting grains, all these little things can make a big difference to use energy more efficiently. And once we use it more efficiently, we can much easier get all of our energy from renewables. I think wind will be the largest source of energy in the future. One wind generator can produce enough electricity for 3,000 homes. It doesn't take that many of them. And I live in southeast Ohio. Everyone said it wasn't sunny or windy enough. And yet I've lived entirely by solar and wind in southeast Ohio, and also entirely by solar in Athens, Ohio, southeast Ohio. Palm Springs, 100% wind energy. These can be put off the coast. London's building the largest wind farm, although T. Boone Pickens is building a wind farm that's in Texas that's set to surpass London's with 4,000 megawatts that he's projecting with $10 billion he's investing in Texas. Solar is another wonderful source of energy. Though it is a little more expensive, it produces energy during the day, during the peak load. As modular design, they're very easy to install and produce a high rate of energy, electricity. We can also have passive solar for heating and active solar for hot water. In California, they're finding paybacks as early as 6 years for these installations. Again, if it works great in Southeast Ohio, it'll work phenomenally all over our great country. And we can be running cars, probably not just with solar panels on the top of cars, so that could do part of it, but by plugging in electric cars with solar panels on the roofs is a very feasible thing. This is in Belize. But I do think solar and wind-powered trains are the way to go. Just the incredible exponential increase of efficiency you get with the steel on steel of trains makes them the way to go. And this creates good and clean jobs instead of the dangerous and dirty jobs of the coal and oil industry. And we can reduce emissions as the Safe Climate Act requests by 80% by 2050. If we think of it as 2% a year, it's not as big of a challenge, although it is a big challenge. And I do think we're going to actually have to move even far faster than this with the most recent findings. A lot of people say, what about India and China? We particularly do need to be concerned about China, but the world looks to us for leadership, and we're the largest industrialized country that has not signed on to the Kyoto Protocol. And so by signing on to the international agreements, we can, and being a good example in our own country, that'll be the best way that we can influence China's and other emissions. So I encourage you to take the time to contact your senators and representatives. It really does make a difference. I've seen that in many, many cases, like protecting the Arctic Refuge, where just a few phone calls have tipped the balance towards protecting versus destroying the refuge. So you can make a difference on this issue if you get active politically. And you don't have to do it just once. I contact my representative and senators almost every weekday.